Just think, George, 33 more years and you could retire from here. He meant it as encouragement. I saw it as a warning. I came across a quote recently that kind of hung with me, stuck with me. It was, "Life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage." I didn't fully understand it at first. I thought courage meant big risks, bold moves, and dramatic leaps, things like that, or standing up under fire. But looking back, I think it's quieter than that. I think it has more to do with what we're willing to tolerate and how long we're willing to tolerate it. I remember back in 1987, I was working as an industrial mechanic at a large plastics factory in Connecticut. And by every reasonable measure, it was a great job. The pay was excellent, the benefits were first rate, and the schedule was awesome. It was the kind of job people called a career. You were supposed to be grateful for that kind of job, and I was, mostly. But one night during a break, an older employee came into the break room. He was just shuffling along. His body showed the cost of decades of work. He spent all those years around dangerous chemicals, heavy equipment, long shifts. And as he shuffled in, he looked at me and he said, "George, just think, 33 more years and you can retire from here." He said it was like some kind of encouragement, but it hit me like a bag of rocks, man. 33 more years? What are you talking about? So I went home the next morning and I told my wife what he said, and I told her how it made me feel. And then we made a decision. We agreed that we would sell our home in Connecticut, move to Florida closer to my parents, and start a business. We didn't have any business concepts or ideas laid out. We didn't have a clear plan. We didn't have a clear plan at all, man. We just knew we couldn't unsee the moment, what the moment had just shown us. And before the move, I was talking with my dad, and I told him I was anxious. I was afraid about failing, afraid of giving up something secure. And he listened, and then quietly he asked me a simple question. What would be the worst thing that could happen if you go through with this? I paused and I was thinking about it. And before I could say anything, he looked at me and smiled and went, "You'd have to get a job." Then he went, "You've done that before, right?" That was it. There were no big speeches, no grand admonitions, no pressure, just a different perspective. So we moved to Florida and started from scratch. I started my first business. It wasn't easy, definitely wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect, far from perfect. But it was definitely a season of being alive. And years later, after we left Florida and eventually resettled back in Connecticut, something happened that really kind of impressed me. I ran into one of my old coworkers from that plant at the bowling alley. And when I knew him years earlier, he was younger than me, maybe 2 to 3 years younger than me. He was a vibrant, healthy, good-looking guy. And that night, he had recently retired from the plant. But I barely recognized him. He looked worn down, used up. He looked just like the other older man who told me I had 33 more years. And standing there with him, something settled in my heart. It wasn't relief, it definitely wasn't pride, but it was a confirmation. I knew without needing to justify it that we had made the right decision. In an earlier video, "The Deathbed is Waiting," I talked about how we spend so much of our lives preparing, that we forget to live along the way. This was one of the first times I saw that clearly. Staying would have been safe, would have been reasonable, would have been responsible, but it would have shrunk my life. Courage, I've learned, isn't about recklessness. It's about refusing to confuse preparation with living. The older man wasn't wrong. I could have stayed. I could have retired from there. But I would have been living someone else's definition of a finished life. Life really does shrink or expand in proportion to one's courage. And sometimes that courage looks like jumping. And sometimes it looks like just being honest with yourself about how a single sentence can impact you. For me, it was as simple as 33 more years. We lived out that season until the next season came along, because life is all about seasons. And courage isn't a one-time decision, it's a posture. And every time we choose safety over living, our life gets a little smaller. Until one day we realize we're prepared for everything except living. I'm George. This is Boomerbust Retirement Realities. Be well, stay safe. Take a long way home. Eat more Danish. Till next time, Boomer out.